Good day, everyone. I'm Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us as we get ever closer to the November 5th general election. In fact, we're taping this show with a couple of candidates today on Tuesday, October 8th, with the election just 4 weeks away. And happy to have on board today Heather Moore, the Democratic and Progressive candidate for the Vermont House from the Franklin-7 district and Enosburg, covering Enosburg and Montgomery, and the incumbent Republican, Allen Penny Demar. Nice to have you folks on board. Penny, we'll start with you. Give us a pretty well-known guy up in your terrain, but give us some background, of course, running for a second term.
I am running for a second term, and thank you. Welcome.
Was that an easy decision to run for re-election? Did it cross your mind not to?
It was not an easy decision.
Yeah.
But after 2 years down there and seeing what takes place and knowing that I know all the people in Enosburg and Montgomery, and I watched their taxes and watched the inflation and crime rate and everything, and I was asked by numerous people, you got to do this again. And I did decide to do it again. The governor stepped up for one more term. So
did you see the governor? Again, we're taping this show on Tuesday, October 8th. Big Republican gathering at Twiggs last night. Were you?
I did not go. No. I'm not your everyday politician, Richard. I did go up to a fundraiser meet and greet in Barton the other day with the governor.
Oh yeah.
And he did support me for the run. I think Sam Douglas and myself and. He did put a flyer out to Montgomery, a mail out, supporting me, and the governor is so right about saying, I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats, I need some moderate people down there, so we can make some decisions away from the supermajority. We didn't get too many votes our way.
Do you consider yourself a moderate?
Well, I did vote for a few things that I took grief from the Republican Party.
And we'll get into issues later also.
Okay, and we can do that, yeah. I tried to look at every bill and analyze it and look at it. And what they don't do down there, a lot of them, is they don't look at the unintended consequences of their actions. And I do. I switched to vote. I voted no for a while. And then as we got more information and more information come on the floor, I switched my vote. I think I've done that a couple times and wasn't popular with the Republicans. But I felt that was the thing to do for Enosburg, Montgomery. And the other thing people's got to realize, when you make a vote, you're looking at your constituents first. But you're making votes for the whole state. It's not, when property tax comes up, and I voted against the property tax, I took some grief from the supervisory union and a few others, and rightfully so. But we were lucky, and we can get into this later
too. Give us a little background on work, a little work background.
A work
background. I can go back to the lockers.
I grew up in Montgomery on Hazen's Notch and moved down to the village. When it got time to hit high school, it was either over the mountain, because we lived at Alpine Haven, and we could have gone to North Country or Sacred Heart at the time, and we picked Enosburg. So I lived in Enosburg, boarded with families in Enosburg my 4 years. Found a nice-looking girl. We dated through high school, and after a couple years, we got married. We got 3 children, 6 grandchildren. They all live in the area. They all within 18 miles, and they want to make Vermont their homes. And I want them to experience the American dream. I want them to live here, be happy, be safe, and not raise taxes every time you turn around, so make it harder to live here. So, and that's one of the other reasons I did run. I had a small business in Enosburg, the Lockers. I was on the school board for many years, the supervisory union board, DRB, zoning. I taught the hunter safety course for 39 years, so young people could handle weapons safely and learn how to hunt. So
I managed to play a little golf now and then.
Golf and softball. So I've been very active in other things too. So I think it fell into place. I lost my wife about 5 years ago. Yeah. And it's an empty house, and I didn't mind running. I don't want to turn into a couch potato, so.
Very good. Heather, tell us about yourself. Give us some background.
Yeah, I was born and raised in St. Albans and went to UVM for my undergraduate degree, and I stayed in Chittenden County for about a decade. I worked in mental health for a little while and retail. Worked through college to help support myself through that. And shortly after college, I did a volunteer program with some friends of mine. We had a poetry journal for about 3 years that we edited and produced to the community free of charge. Back in 2017, my husband, my son, and we moved to Enosburg, where we've settled in. My family's from the area as well, so it was kind of like my grandparents were not too far away, up on Chester Arthur Road at the time. And I've been in education since 2010, so in the after-school sector. And some other things that I've been doing, I'm a therapy dog team with my black golden doodle. So he comes to after-school programs with me. We teach Spanish and French and art with students. I'm a community member advisor for the Vermont Community Foundation. I am a founding member of the Community Empowering Youth nonprofit. We're opening 2 youth centers. Enosburg's almost ready to open up. We just need to hire staff and finish some renovations of the space, and then we're going to be opening up a youth center in Richford as well. I am the community lead for the Vermont Youth Project for Enosburg and Richford, which is a holistic approach to positive youth development. So we're working on supporting and uplifting and empowering youth through civic engagement, where we have grant money to give to youth, and they come up with projects based on peer input, and then they establish the project, which is helping them understand like the democratic process and civic engagement. And that's part of how the youth centers came about too, was feedback from the youth about what they need in their communities. And along with that, we also look at what other supports for the other community members do we need within those communities to help support young people. So it's a whole approach.
Of course, you're also an Enosburg Falls Village trustee.
I am.
Elected when?
March 2020, so a week before we shut down with COVID. As a community.
Right before COVID.
Yeah. My first one was meeting was a Zoom meeting. It was all very
Sandy
strange.
Throlin's an old friend of mine, one of your colleagues.
Yep, we served on the
I'm
board
guessing,
together.
correct me if I'm wrong, is this the first time there have been at least 2 women on the village board? Or
No.
Is that right?
Before Sandy, we did have
Really?
another board member with me. Yep. So, but yeah, we have a nice. It's been a really great experience being on that board. Been really enjoying it.
Actually, it makes me think of one local issue, and you're both Enosburg Falls residents. Local option tax, is that coming up for vote November 5th?
It is coming up for vote.
That would just affect, that's just for the village of Enosburg Falls?
Correct, just the village, yep.
Do you support that?
I think that there's definitely some merit to the idea, and it's worth a conversation with the community. So we will have a community meeting, I believe it's on October 23rd, and so that people can ask more questions. What the research that we've done is it's a way of raising some revenue without necessarily having to increase property taxes, which is something we're trying to be mindful of. We have a lot of infrastructure that needs repair, and we don't want to keep taking out bonds and then having to pay interest. We're trying to get a little ahead of the game in a way that has a low financial impact on the
Correct.
community.
Does Montgomery, in fact, Montgomery has I'm a St. Albans City in town also.
Yeah,
So,
Montgomery did that, I think, 2 years ago.
That's right. Penny, any thoughts on the LOT?
Yeah,
Of course, the state loves this because the state gets, 30% of
they
this?
get about 30%. I
Yeah.
think it's either 60/40 or 33,
Yeah.
No, I've been around this morning, campaigning in Enosburg, and every business is against it. Everyone. I talk, not the ones I haven't talked to, they're against it.
What about, are you running into residents who might have a different point of view?
Well, they weren't aware of it. I guess Heather might help us out. The trustees had to vote this to be on the ballot, right?
Yes,
So was it unanimous?
we voted to agree to do that, yes.
Okay.
And so
Unanimously
we
to put it on
have,
the ballot?
So
I
it's,
believe it was.
Anyway,
unanimous,
obviously
yeah.
majority.
Yeah, it'll be in our minutes, but we have talked about it several times. We considered doing it for the March village meeting day, which is the week after town meeting day.
Yeah.
And we decided then wasn't the time, but it has been talked about a lot. And that's one of the reasons we want it for the informational meeting as well, because maybe people don't want to do it, maybe people have questions, and maybe they don't understand the system. So that's part of what will come out on the 23rd, and if people vote it down, people vote it down. It's up to them.
Yeah, no, I guess my question is why was it put on the March ballot? Why is it November? And
Well, obviously, you're going to get a hugely bigger turn. Wouldn't you rather have a bigger turnout for that?
I would, and I think that's probably good enough, but
How many people voted the village meeting? I mean,
very
that's
few.
Very
tiny.
few, yeah. Part of the
But-
reason we wanted to separate it was because we didn't want that issue to be like mixed up with other issues. We wanted people to be able to separate it and think about that specific issue and have some time to really think through the implications and what it might mean for them.
Yeah, I think the confusion with all that is 1% sales tax, okay?
And that's what it would do, typically add
Is-
1% to the current
Yeah,
6%.
okay, so if
sales tax.
mobile station sells gas, there's a gas tax, is it 1% on that?
I don't believe that, I could be wrong, but I don't believe it applies to the,
Okay.
I don't think it
Gas
does either,
tax?
but not
Yeah, but it's very confusing, and people weren't aware of this till all of a sudden it's on the ballot, so people are asking questions, I got phone calls on it. But the business is saying, well, it's not much, it's only 1%. But at the end of the week, it's a lot of money. And what I'm gonna do is either I have to eat it, or I've got to pass it on to the customer. So I said, well, I did talk to one person from the village, and they said, well, we're looking to hit the tourist. He said, you know how much tourist business is my business? Less than 15%.
Yeah.
He says, I'm hitting the people in my village.
Yeah.
And people are going to rebel, and they're going to say, okay, if I got to go to the bakery to get delis, food, for, which is rooms and meals, right? I'll stop to Harmon's.
Of course, which Heather has
So-
touched on, and again, we'll move on, it's a local
Yeah.
issue. What proponents would say is, yes, you're paying some extra buckos, but again, you're going to have money
Yep.
maybe to pay for infrastructure that may keep down your property taxes. But anyway, there are
we've had
pros
many
and
times
cons
where
like
we've said, I'm
anything.
sorry, we can't pay that sidewalk this year, we
Yeah.
can't raise our taxes
Yeah.
that much at this point. So it's some of the stuff that we're trying to help, but hopefully people ask those questions
Yeah.
at the meeting or, you know, to the village. We've done a lot of research on it. The village manager and the finance director definitely have
Yeah.
more of the background knowledge. I've read the Q&A. I can certainly help people answer those questions, but that's why we want to talk about it.
And the voters will determine this.
Yeah.
It's not, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, Penny, you may have already touched on this. Biggest issue that when you're out campaigning, is there one dominant issue on the minds of a lot of voters?
Property tax.
Property tax,
Safety.
affordability. Boy, I guess safety, I guess maybe that's the obvious thing to start with Enosburg having its,
Yep.
second murder in a few months or
Yep.
something. So public safety, affordability.
Those are the two things that, and I've been out quite a lot, and the safety is a big issue. And then it just snowballs, safety, and it's a different subject.
Okay, let me just throw, a quick question. Speaking of that, does the village contract, have you got any contract with Sheriff's Department at this point?
The village itself doesn't have a contract, it's the town that has a contract,
does.
and as of July 1st, no.
Wow, and I just wanted to get that in. Sorry, Penny.
No,
go ahead.
and the people I'm talking to want more police service.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess the choice is the Sheriff's Department.
Well, I think I went to a meeting, Heather was there, and discussed all that. Bob Norris was there from Sheldon, Tom
From
Oliver,
Sheldon,
and
yeah.
I can't think of the gentleman's name from Richford. And supposedly there's a study committee to look into it. But, and again, just like the other thing we were just talking about, present something with one sheriff, two sheriffs, three sheriffs, contracts, your own sheriff's department. Let the people decide.
Yeah.
Put it on a ballot, let the voters decide what they want, and what they want to spend. So, but safety is, there was just this weekend, last weekend, there was 19 females, I don't know if they're all females, but majority, went to a safety class taught in Bakersfield to how to handle weapons. I thought that was pretty impressive. And I do know, I've had a number of ladies call me about gun safety, and they've bought guns. And I suggest to them, no, that's not the route to take. I don't want you shooting anybody, and I don't want you shooting yourself, but people are scared. And I do believe we need a better contract or our own police department, and it's getting out of hand. We got the big drug issue in Enosburg.
Unfortunately, it
people
sounds
are
like you have
scared.
plenty of company.
Yep.
And can you even, again, I keep reading that all the state police are way understaffed. Could you even contract with state police if you wanted to, or are they not?
My understanding is there's limited capacity still, so,
Okay.
but there are
the Sheriff's
conversations
Department would be
underway.
your main hope then?
Yeah. And there is a subcommittee to discuss or present findings of cost. I've heard a minimum of like $400,000 for the first year, but it's probably much higher than that. So that kind of goes back to like, what can we afford and what can we do? When I've been to several community safety meetings over the past few years, and there's multiple factors in community safety. One of them is the police department and the judicial system, and part of it is also social factors and making sure that folks have access to basic needs and health and mental health services. And I've been a big advocate for making sure that as Enosburg considers whether or not they want their own police department, that they also consider work with human service departments, because it's a multi-layered strategy approach, and those are the approaches that are successful.
Is the town or village considering having its own police? Of course, I've been around long enough remembering Police Chief Buzzy Bilodeau many decades ago. But is that some discussion about
Everything's
having,
on the table right now.
Really?
We're trying to think through all of the different possibilities,
Well,
again, to see
public
what's
safety is a
feasible
big
and what's
issue.
affordable. Yeah.
is that's an issue you're running into when you're campaigning?
Oh, yeah, people are definitely concerned about safety, for sure, especially in light of what we've experienced, and even before those like absolutely atrocious, heartbreaking situations that we've experienced. It is very concerning right now. It's been bubbling up the last 4 years. I mean, especially with the pandemic, it's just it's surged. And we've definitely been struggling, and as a community, there's a lot of suffering because of it.
On the affordability issue, obviously a huge issue statewide. Certainly the Democratic supermajority in the legislature, certainly getting a lot of criticism, certainly from Republicans about that. You run into some of that. What do you say to folks who are, just unhappy with the Democratic supermajority, I assume?
Yeah.
You run into some people like that.
I do, and I would say nobody's very happy with like the financial state that we're in right now. I think I've been hearing there's some ideas that have been floating in Montpelier, maybe like some adjustments to our taxing system, and try to spend a little differently and a little smarter in some ways. I feel we need to look at some of our systems and consider how can we reinvest in a way that we really get the return on our investment, and that's both supporting our schools and supporting our healthcare system, our mental health system as well, which is kind of, I always struggle that I have to list those independently because they should be really viewed as one. I've seen a lot of supports, programs like Safe Routes to School, Rise Vermont. They lose funding, and sometimes the funding comes out really quickly without having a plan of being able to find new supports for those services that were providing a lot of healthy options and like helping people live the healthy lifestyles that they want to live. That when those services go away, we find a lot of expenses in other realms, as in increased costs in healthcare, mental health care, substance abuse, and then the crime comes with it. So if we can address some of those issues in a maybe slightly different way than perhaps we have been, I can see some costs going down.
Yeah. I've seen these signs around Franklin County. I finally stopped to read one today in St. Albans, the Vote Republican. And again, and I'm sure you've seen it, I suspect you have, Heather, but vote Republican unless you like, having trouble reading my writing, unless you like higher taxes, soaring fees, and runaway crime. And certainly the first two spots, I can totally understand runaway crime. And again, I realize you're one Republican, but
Yeah.
blaming Democrats for runaway crime too?
No,
Is that a little overstated?
I would think so, but it's so frustrating with crime.
Yeah.
I just read today, there's a gentleman, 159 encounters with the state police.
Yeah.
159.
Yeah, I heard
Okay.
Burlington stories like that.
Yep, and it's
unbelievable.
and it's not one in
numbers.
here. It's rampant.
Yeah.
And this last episode in Enosburg, okay,
Yeah.
and it's going to get down to drugs and mental illness. This young man had been
Sounds like the
arrested.
accused had some history.
He's
with
got
some of this
history.
stuff. Yeah.
So what have we done?
Yeah.
Okay, and if you've got a supermajority party, why hasn't that been addressed? There's some bills down there that helps address it that don't get looked at.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, that this, and the governor is saying it so hard. The on-balance down there is doing harm to Vermont. Let's fight, let's argue, let's debate, and let's compromise, and let's get something done.
I guess there
That
were-
hasn't happened in 2 years.
Yeah, I guess there were some bills. I mean, shoplifting, I believe there was a bill that comes down on shoplifting at least a little harder, but again, you obviously
Okay,
feel that
okay,
yeah.
think about that.
another,
A shoplifting bill.
yeah.
All right, it's going to be $900, so you can do it 3 times. Under 300, you're still okay. You be that business and let that happen and see if that's a law you want. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's a Band-Aid, and that's what we do down here. We Band-Aid. Our healthcare, I'm on the healthcare committee. We Band-Aid. I was told it's not up to us how to pay for it. We have to supply the best care, and that's what we're here. We got to provide the best health care here. We don't worry about the cost. When you do, I had a lady just the other day tell me at the elderly housing, she says, my Social Security is only about $1,000. I pay $300 for my backup insurance. Then she pays a percent of that. Okay, so what we've come to is the state is like this with their money. They need more money, they spend it. Enosburg Falls and Montgomery, most of the people on fixed income, Social Security, and maybe a retirement, every time the state takes more money from them, their money goes down, but their income don't move. That little bit of Social Security every 3rd year. And so they've got to adjust their budget to keep paying the cost. And they're struggling. And then you go to the grocery store, they say there's no inflation. Well, you better argue a different with me about no inflation, not with the price of food today.
Heather, you want to jump in on some of
Yeah,
that?
sorry. So I've talked to some people too with like the fixed incomes, and what I'm hearing too is subsidies haven't changed in decades for them, so they're not getting subsidies comparable to inflations from years and years, and that's so expanding some of our systems to meet the more contemporary cost for them, right? And again, kind of going back to some of the other supports I've talked about, there's ways of creating our healthcare system that will lower the cost and expand access to folks. Like, people are having higher medical expenses in part because they don't have access when they have an early need to see a provider. So if we can both find a system to expand provider access or individuals' access to having insurance, and through that help people address healthcare problems when they're young and early symptoms, then the cost overall goes down. But that's not what people are experiencing. They're coping through life feeling disgruntled and possibly miserable, like trying to go to work when they don't feel well because they can't afford to go to the doctors. And then they have a compounded issue.
So any answer, just sounds like, to me, Vermont just got a lot of problems. It just sounds like almost overwhelming to me, but you're candidate, so I guess maybe that's not a word you're going to use. But.
Oh, no, we always have moments in our lives where there's, or our histories where we have a lot of compounded things to work through. The pandemic, I think, made things a lot more challenging. And so we have to address that, and we have to pivot and maybe move a little differently than we would have prior to the pandemic to address some issues. We also have some pretty wonderful stuff in our communities and in Vermont, and so I think we need to continue to support those.
Yeah. One again, mentioned the strong criticism of Republicans, obviously, by the Democratic supermajority. One of the bills that they, I think, in total you voted against was the child care bill. And I guess that's being funded by what, payroll tax, starting this past July 1st?
I ended up voting for that.
No, good. Glad boy, you're probably one of the few Republicans.
I think so.
Because I was going to say, that just seems like another one of those huge issues.
I didn't like it originally. I didn't care for it, okay? And then they ended up changing it around with amendments and stuff, that there is some copay with some people, more wealthy people, they're paying their a little bit stuff. And then when it got down to it, I said, you know what? If we're going to draw families here to work and live, then we need daycare. So my vote was changed at the end on the roll call, and if you can look it up, you'll see where I voted. And another vote, the same thing. And I changed my vote again. I voted no on the nicotinoid bill. That's the chemical they put on corn seed to plant it, and it's supposed to kill the pollinators. I voted no right up through, and the reason I voted no was the fact that the bill read that it was going to be outlawed, banned, okay, but they were going to exempt golf courses, strawberry patches, blueberry patches, and apple orchards. And I said, if it's going to kill all the pollinators, this seed is in the ground, this is in the air, blowing miles. So I said, no, if it's that harmful to pollinators, ban it all. And they didn't. And when it come time to the roll call vote, I said, I'm going to take some grief from the farmers up home, some big farmers, but I said, a little is better than nothing. So I changed my vote. That wasn't popular either, but I lived with it, and that's how I operate. And my question is going to be to you, if you ever saw my voting record, so you can think about that.
In fact, actually, you want to let me get back on that daycare bill. Heather, realizing you're not there, that's something you would have supported, presumably, or?
Yes, absolutely. Child care, I see it
Another huge
all the
issue.
time where people say, I would love to work for you, but I don't have child care. And that creates a big challenge for the school in general and for the after-school programs that I oversee. And then when I talk to business owners,
the labor shortage issue with everybody looking for more help, seemingly.
Yeah, and then also adding into that the welfare of the children. For the families that are looking for childcare. Generally, people go to work for multiple reasons, and one of those is so that they can afford housing and food and clothing and supports for the children. And if they can't find childcare and they can't go to work, everybody's suffering in that family.
So that the daycare bill, you were one of, I assume, just.
I would say there was
probably
probably less than. I'm not sure. There was probably 4 or 5 of us.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I didn't mind crossing, I'll do what's right. You give me the information, and I'll try to make a good decision, and that's how I operate down there. And so, but the daycare, the daycare thing, I was a little disgruntled with it because we do have some people that are financially well off that could pay a big share, and it's same with the food program. Okay, originally the food program was it's free for all, right? No income level.
You're talking school
meals.
School meals.
But we have people that are well-to-do that could afford their meals for their children, and why should I burden some of my elderly to pay more taxes and stuff to feed those children that some business owner that's worth a couple $1 million gets it free too?
So you don't think the state should be funding all these free meals?
No, I think I think they argued about how we could do that without embarrassing children.
Which is, I guess, one of the concerns.
Here's what you do: you have a little card. You put it through just like we do at the state down there for our meals. You put it through. Nobody knows if you paid $0 or $10 for that meal. Nobody know it, and so we keep giving, and there's not much of a pot left to take, and that's my concern.
Heather, what are your thoughts on the free meals? Was that a good
I
move by
found
the
it very
state?
exciting.
Yeah.
I see, 'cause, again, I work in the school system. I'm in 8 different schools very regularly, and I have seen over and over again, like disparity of foods and meals, and some kids hoarding. And it's less so when the food is free for everybody, when it's a complete level playing field. And students can't be successful in the classroom and then in their futures if they're coming to school hungry. And then families struggle to apply for subsidy supports in many cases. And so sometimes they might not because they are afraid of what somebody might call them if they apply for subsidy and support. So people don't ask when they need to ask because of biases. So when it's completely free for students, they can get the food, there's no judgment, and then they are healthy and fed to be able to have a good, successful day.
We're about halfway through the show. I'm sorry, Penny. you
I'm
want-
not against the program.
Yeah.
I'm against how they funded it.
Any thoughts? Was there a better way to fund it, or any way to fund it?
When you have a cap on your income,
Okay.
and if you're above that cap, you pay a
Okay.
portion of it, and if you happen to be a millionaire, you pay all of it. That's the only problem I had with it. So it's how you fund it. So
Yeah, again, because what I've seen is people don't necessarily feel comfortable with those financial forms, and then they don't ask for the assistance. That's the truth that I have seen.
About halfway through the show, have you got a question you want to ask Penny Demar here? Heather?
Oh, goodness, we were chatting, and I haven't really thought through my question
Penny, you want
yet.
to start? Penny, you got
Well,
a question for?
I do have one, and talking about my voting record, nobody knows that I voted that way on those 2 bills, and maybe some others. I think your first post on Facebook was me being absent on a crucial vote that had implications of reproductive rights. Okay? In 2 years, I was absent 1 bill, 1 roll call. And that's because the year before I even ran, I was on a cruise, or I paid for a cruise, and it happened to be that day in April. So I did miss that vote. But your post said reproductive rights. It wasn't reproductive rights. It was protecting a woman's reproductive rights. Okay, so it wasn't I voted against abortions or something. And I said, you know what? I don't think you've heard a thing that I've done in this campaign that is kind of vicious. And I said, to start off that way, I was disappointed. And the next post was, I'm not beholden to lobbyists and big business. I've never taken a thing from a lobbyist in Montpelier.
Okay.
And I said, you know what? I said, people ask me about you. I said, I think she's a nice lady. I think we want to accomplish the same things. The way she wants to do it is her way. I think that's wrong. It's my way. But I haven't trashed you a bit. And I said, to start off a campaign, that was tough. So that was my question. Were you aware of my voting record?
What would you have voted on that?
On what?
That particular,
The reproductive.
The reproductive?
yeah, and the gender
I
affirming
probably
care.
would have voted no. And the reason is, New Hampshire has a very nice one. 6 months, after 6 months, it's got to be medically reasonable for the mother or the child. The Vermont's bill, you can abort the last day before your delivery in Vermont. And I don't think that's right. I just don't. So I would. But the other thing is, it's not an issue in Vermont. We keep bringing abortions up. It's not an issue.
I mean, it certainly was a couple of years ago with the
It was a couple of years ago,
statewide
but
vote.
right now, we have in our Constitution, abortion rights bill, and it's a new issue, but that's what we keep bringing up.
But I do believe there's also the gender affirming care in that bill as well.
It was protection of gender affirming care. Yeah, it was, but it had nothing to do with abortion itself. So I was a little disappointed starting off a campaign.
Okay, I hear that. And yeah, that was, meant to show just maybe some contrast between some voting opportunities, but it sounds like you would have voted no had you been there. I believe very strongly in whatever we can for supporting individuals, even if it's just a small percentage of individuals. And in terms of the gender affirming care, I think that our state needs to do as much as we can to make sure that every person feels that they are getting safe, quality, adequate health care.
Any question for Penny? You want to ponder that? Nothing you have to do.
I was going to kind of retort with what his
Okay.
his vote would have
Okay, we'll
been.
move on.
Yeah, no, just talk about the LBGT thing. There was a bill down there to protect the rights of hospitals, doctors, nurses, protecting the rights of LBGT person that was changing. I voted for that because I said, but I tried to get it more. I spoke up and I said, you know what, this don't go far enough. We should be protecting every doctor, nurse, and hospital for anything. If a doctor does not want to perform an abortion because of his personal reasons or his religion or whatever, we don't protect that one. We just protect, and I thought that was wrong. We should protect every doctor, every nurse, every hospital, for regardless. It's your personal care and what you want. That's what we should protect. So, but I did give in, and I said it's a little bit of better than nothing. So I voted for that. So
Maybe touching on healthcare reform, the folks, I get the Chronicle, very good weekly paper out of Barton, Vermont, Orleans County. And boy, a huge issue up there, which you may well be familiar with. The Green Mountain Care Board hired a consultant, and consultant came back saying several of Vermont's community, smaller hospitals were in tough shape, and in particular, this consultant said North Country Hospital in Newport don't need it, scale it down to maybe a mental health facility. But anyway, I suspect you're somewhat familiar with that issue, but any concern about our hospital, Northwestern Medical Center? I didn't read that whole report. I'm not sure that was on the hit list, but is that a concern that the NMC may be on the chopping block down the line?
I've been reading just a little bit of stuff that sounds like NMC has been doing some proactive changes or making some proactive changes.
Yeah.
So I'm hopefully not. I know that there was a little while ago of concern about, maybe people could just simply go up to Burlington, and unfortunately Burlington is not accessible to a lot of individuals.
Not to mention just difficulty getting appointments sometimes,
Yes.
months down the road.
Yes, so we do need to make sure that decisions that are being made don't prevent access for people to be able to reach their health care.
Yeah. Again, huge issue in Newport. You're reading,
Yeah,
you picking
yeah,
up any
I read-
concern
I
about
read the-
Northwestern?
I read the report from, I think it was
Yeah.
Dr. Harmony that mentioned all that.
it's,
There was some good points, and what I didn't take from what they're scaring us down here about voting on this.
Yeah.
The point I took, they suggested, and they said, these are things you better look at.
right.
And
Oh, yeah, and
that
these are
doesn't
just
mean it's going to
recommendations,
happen,
sure.
okay? But we do need to, the Green Mountain Care Board is a little short on giving the appropriate raises that these hospitals need. Then you take, Medicare don't pay what they should pay, that's federal, and the state don't pay Medicaid enough. So you've got all three identities that are struggling on who's going to pay and foot for, and then they try to get the insurance companies. And one of my concerns is these insurance companies, if it keeps up, they're just pulling out. A little bit of Vermont ain't going to, Blue Cross Blue Shield already changed their main office, I think, to Michigan or somewhere out there. Where would we be if we don't have insurance? So it's a touchy subject, and they should be all getting together, my healthcare committee, Means and Ways committee, and the governor. They should be talking about this, but I think we don't fund our hospitals to full. How much they don't get paid for?
Anybody want to add anything to that issue, or should we move on?
Well, I guess I wonder, going back to, Penny, you mentioned, we can't, raise taxes and income, but what would be your suggestion with supporting the hospitals then, if you feel that they need more support?
I would at least try to get our governor to talk to the feds and the appropriation committees, our health care and all that, and try to deal with Medicare especially. I think they only pay, if the bill is $8,000, they only pay what they want to. It could be only 40, 60%. There's got to be some set pays. You know, this is what it cost us to provide health insurance, and this is what you're gonna pay. Medicaid's the same thing. Instead of giving more increases on Medicaid, we put more people on Medicaid last year. My healthcare committee voted in to extend Medicaid for 1,700 more people in the state of Vermont. And those people were people turning 65, that when you're 65, you're off Medicaid and you go to Medicare. But their Medicare, their Social Security wasn't enough to even pay the premium because they've never worked in their life. So they couldn't even pay for the premium. So we let them stay on Medicaid. And I said, well, listen, that's fine and dandy. And our new Americans were on that too. And they had to have medical insurance. I said, that's fine and dandy. But I said, what about next year? How many people 64 are going to be 65 in the same boat? You know, we keep spending this money, pay. That's not helping us with health care. Somebody's getting cheated. So.
Any response?
Yeah, I think we need to do some work with the medical system. Again, I feel like we've talked about this a couple of times.
Yeah.
Like
We
premiums
have
are going
other
up
issues.
double digits, and hospitals aren't always being reimbursed at the premium rates. We need to balance that out.
Yeah. You're in education. I suspect education finance reform, another huge issue, and legislature certainly, has been wrapped up in that. But any magical solutions? And I guess my question, do you understand how education is funded in Vermont?
I feel like I understand it a little bit more than the average person that I talk to. It is a very complicated system.
Complicated, convoluted system. I mean, any hope to make that simpler, to turn that around?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that, and I think that everybody that was in Montpelier, they see that like we have some more work to do, right? And I've heard some potential ideas of maybe doing some more of what do we call it, income tax base, or making some changes there and looking at, where can savings be made, but also where some transparency and helping folks to be able to understand where the system, how we are collecting the taxes. It's, again, very confusing for folks. And we do have like the statewide system, but it's an inequitable system right now, where communities don't necessarily have the resources for supporting the infrastructures of their building or hiring enough staff to provide good opportunities for their students, where some communities have some other things. So we need to continue to look into that statewide funding structure and how that we can make some choices to make it more equitable for everybody.
Yeah. Penny, the legislature did try to jump into this a bit. Of course, I loved it when they, at one point, said, "Oh, school boards go back to work right after they've done their budgets and try to chop some money out and then vote later and stuff."
I know.
It didn't knock me over too much, but
Well,
any
it does.
any hope for simplifying?
Well,
things?
when they passed this, there's a study committee on this, and one of the things already is based on income. Well, I don't know if that will work. And if every person out there, every business was honest about their income, but a lot of farmers don't show a lot of income. They put the money back in the farm. A lot of businesses don't show their whole income. They're supposed to by law. But if you depend on income, it's given a lot of people reason not to report their whole income. So it could backfire.
Yeah.
Now,
any other
well,
ways to go?
I've always said probably the most fairest tax is a consumer tax. We don't charge any service fees on lawyers or doctors or whatever.
Meaning adding the sales tax?
Adding a type of a sales tax to all service and have it go to the education department. It's a fair tax. Everybody would pay for it. All spectrums of society You know, if you're low income and you got to hire a plumber, you got to pay the service tax, okay? And you say, well, they can't afford it now. Well, earlier you talked about subsidies and stuff. That probably would be covered. But if you're myself and you need a plumber, pay for it. So I just don't think we can keep property tax. You want people to leave Vermont? Raise them again. And if we don't do something next year, probably 225 or 26. It's 225. There's no changes and there's no money. I don't think they can up any fees or taxes to fund the property tax next year. And the governor's already said it's going to be at least 7%, probably closer to 10.
Having been on average, what, 14%?
Listen, I was in Barton the other day, 22 to 27% in most of those little towns. We can't continue that. Now, there's a lot of arguments, and it's not popular with the school community at all, but we have 53 supervisory unions in this state. That's a lot of teachers. Other states don't even have half that. But boy, I take a lot of grief for saying that, you know, because the employee supervisory union, my kids teaches there, my kids are all teachers, but we got to make some tough decisions. And to me, that's one of them. Do you feel that 53 supervisory unions is adequate for the state of Vermont?
I am not entirely sure because I don't know all of the different communities. I know that we have one supervisory union that's rather large. I feel like it's like in the top 20 of, like, we're one of the larger ones in the state, and it's a very big system, and I think that we do a very good job, but I can't speak to exactly all the other systems. I do think that some of the other issues that we've talked about are also driving factors in the cost of education. Healthcare, for one, is one of those. A report, something that I read recently, is if we don't make any changes to our school budgets, that's where the 7% comes from, is purely because of healthcare. So if we address healthcare costs, we can also address the costs of education. And those are some of the other factors besides just considering how we raise our funds. It's how can we look at other systems within our state that affects other systems that will lower our costs.
I got two things. Number one, I think our supervisory union did a hell of a good job. Okay, we had 3 votes. They got it down sustainable. Our increase was a pleasant surprise. They did a hell of a good job up there. But on the other end of it, now I lost my train of thought on the other end, but anyway, we've got to fund this differently, and it's going to take some tough choices.
Penny, I think I asked you and other candidates the same question 2 years ago, and another huge issue out there, just the homelessness issue, unhoused population, and how the state's dealing with that or not dealing with that. Should that be a state responsibility? Should the state do whatever it has to do to deal with these folks?
They have to. Okay, housing is a problem. I got mixed feelings about it because, it depends who you want to believe down there. Okay, this one says we need 24,000 houses. There's 100 families.
I think I heard today, with 35 to 45,000 housing units.
And there's 200 families with children that are on house, and then the governor's administration says no, it's not that many. It's under 20, but depends who you listen to. And the other thing is, our state don't even know who is categorized as homeless.
Yeah.
What's the definition of a homeless person in the state of Vermont?
I guess it's pretty broad. Obviously, you got some people living in encampments, other people living just in their cars.
You got children from this town that wants to go to school in this town, so they go live with an uncle. They're homeless. No, they got a roof. But anyway, the other problem I do have with that is the fact that right in Enosburg, and Heather, when you walk around, you check and ask the people there. You haven't been there as long as I have. How many available rental units is there? I know of many.
You know many.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like Enosburg's doing a lot better than a lot of other places.
Well, they're not rented. The people I talk to, I say, you got an apartment, right? I'm not going to rent that.
And why? Because they're
because
concerned who's going to rent it?
That's right. Who's going to rent it? And if you have issues with them, how you get them out. I was a landlord in Montgomery at that time. It took me a year to get people out that hadn't paid me for a year. Then it cost me $3,000 for lawyer's fees. I sold it. I'm not going to rent again. But right near me, there's at least 3 homes that have apartments. And I won't mention their name on the air, but they're not going to rent. So, would you rent an apartment today?
Yeah, I've been a landlord in my past, and nothing I'm looking to get into in my old age.
But that's the problem.
No, I hear the concern.
So do we need 3,000 homes? I don't think so. We need a better system to house these people with these available places. How many homes are vacant in Enosburg that could be fixed up?
Houses or rentals?
Houses.
Oh,
There's quite a few.
I can think of 4 or 5 off the top of my head. Some of them are being
But we're going to
renovated
go out
right
and
now.
build 30,000 brand-new homes. At what cost and inflation? Who pays for them? I think we got to look at other avenues.
Heather, same question for you. Should it be a state responsibility? Should the state be doing whatever it needs to do to deal with the unhoused population?
Well, there's certain responsibilities that I think do belong to the state. I know that Act 250 had some updates recently to try to help folks to be able to expand. So that's an act, that is the state's part of the response, whereas the building part is the community's. I think that we also need to look into why are folks feeling are in places where they can work full-time jobs and not afford housing. And I do believe, Penny, correct me if I'm wrong, but recently there was a bill to try to enhance some protections for renters and landlords collectively. So that's part of the solution. Maybe it is enough, maybe it's not. I know I hear from both sides. People who own these housing units have struggled for sure, and as we make responses to support mental health and substance abuse addiction treatment, that's going to make it so that people probably feel a little bit more like they're okay with renting if they're choosing to not have their places up, for renters. And then we can consider other options as well that maybe that could work in terms of the housing that the motel system that people are phasing out of right now. I've seen in other places different kind of programs where there's a phasing out system where the individuals who have those units, instead of just be giving a voucher, they're actually given like rental contracts, and then as they start being able to pay back into the system, so that it's not just here's some money for some rent. It's how do we start building back what's affordable for you, and in cases where people need health support or they need help with their substance abuse, part of that contract also includes means and support for doing that, and that ends up helping with people being healthy overall and a better thriving community. So those are some systems that the state could potentially look into or adapt and navigate around to help support the housing situation.
And I have a couple more issues about 6 months. Boy, and it's funny. Franklin County, Enosburg Falls, the dairy capital of the world. It's amazing how I just don't hear much talk about dairy issues these days. And again, I think I saw a figure, Franklin County down to now under 100 dairy farms statewide, about 500. And of course, obviously, the farms have gotten bigger. I think milk production is still pretty
milk
stable.
production.
But you're running into anybody who's concerned about the dairy industry these days?
Everybody.
Yeah.
And then you got some people say, well, you don't need dairy. You can soy milk, almond milk, and all that. If they turned all that farmland into cropland, we could feed the world.
Right. And your 2 years in Montpelier, I mean, not many issues. You mentioned the seed issue, but not much dairy talk.
Not much dairy talk. The big farmers are getting bigger. The smaller farms are going out, and it's hard. It's hard for any small business in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that small business owners getting rich. They're just surviving.
Yeah.
And your dairy farms are the same way.
Yeah. You're running into folks, and you run into anybody asking about dairy issues, Heather?
Not specifically in terms of campaigning. You definitely, we support dairy farmers in our communities for sure, but not specifically around the campaign right now.
Yeah, border issues, the Swanton sector, which covers a lot of ground. Heard a talk by the Border Patrol chief, who's a St. Albans guy, the other day, and I guess, 19,000 apprehensions in the last fiscal year, way more than they've had for years combined. Running any border, does that issue come up at all? You're not.
It does, yeah. There's definitely some concern about all the national borders, but the border with Canada has been coming up, and there's concern about just not having enough patrol, or what the repercussions would be for somebody to come over illegally. So that's something community-wide that needs to be looked into.
Yeah. Penny, does that come up in your travels?
It's overwhelming. And people on the borders, they're seeing it all the time.
Yeah.
Hunters have been putting their game cameras out, and it's a daily thing. Our judicial system don't handle it. They take them, they detain them, and they release them. That's not going to be the fix. So when you've got 19,000, that's how many they've apprehended. How many did they miss?
Right, that question, in fact, was asked. That question's always on my mind. And what the chief said was, we know of about, I think he said 6,000 plus who we know we didn't get. However, they know that. But yeah, that's obviously a good question.
I don't know the answer because being a harsh statement, then they've got to go back. That's one of the reasons our state is running into financial trouble. We're housing a lot. We're housing a lot of those people, and eventually they'll probably be productive citizens. But until then, we're housing, we're feeding them, we're giving them insurance or health insurance.
Down to just a couple minutes, an issue I wouldn't have thought of asking, but I heard a mention to it on radio this morning. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Baruth, and maybe he's tried to do this before, just concerned about gun violence. And Penny, probably know where this is going, but I guess he's going to maybe introduce or reintroduce a bill to ban assault weapons in Vermont. Your quick thoughts on that?
First of all, they don't understand what an assault weapon is.
And that came up in one.
Hammer's an assault weapon. That bat was an assault weapon. Okay?
So is that to say
I don't want to see any bill that's going to harm a law-abiding citizen in the state of Vermont. And it's not the law-abiding citizens.
You think it's going to be too hard to differentiate that?
You know, they play on fears. An assault weapon, this ugly-looking thing. You know, we've got laws that takes care of that. And you know what? If somebody, I would go as far as if somebody broke the law with a gun, any law, robbery, anything, automatic jail time. If you use a gun in a crime, you're going to pay. What they're doing, you think the drug lords are going to give up their assault weapons? They're not going to.
Heather, any thoughts on that?
I would need to read some more details about what that is and how they define. I do think that it's really imperative that we consider our community safeties when we're looking into that bill.
Yeah, just very quickly, down to 2 minutes, and I want to give you. No, I guess actually I'll give you each about a minute right now. Penny, you went first. We're going to let Heather go last, but give you about a minute or so. But again, looking for a second term.
I'm looking for a second term.
Many challenges as there are. You'd like to get back to Montpelier.
Well, what I want, I guess I had a little statement here at the end.
Yeah.
All right. We've got the most popular governor in the country. He vetoed probably 13 bills. We went down 2 different times in less than 4 hours, overrid everyone without a discussion, without debate, nothing. That's got to stop. We need a different balance down there. And what I'm looking for, I want to keep this town, our state, safe and affordable for everyone. And we're not going that route. Just look at our track record. Something's got to change. And I think if we get a better balance down there, I think we can at least compromise and come up with a better solution what we're doing.
Good. Heather, we'll give you the last word, last minute or so.
Great. I'm super excited about this opportunity, for sure. I am a person who likes to look at the situation and figure out what the root cause is and try to help create solutions that address the root cause, looking for supports for our now, which is our financial situation, and also our future, because we have to make sure that the plan works for today and it works for the next generation and generations beyond that. I believe that I have the ability to look at those different perspectives and see how each bill connects with other bills in other parts of our social situations so that we have a thriving and comfortable Vermont for all of our residents.
Okay, we'll call it a day. Thanks very much
Thank
to
Thank you, Heather.
Penny.
Democratic and Progressive candidate Heather Moore, running in the Franklin-7 district and covering Enosburg and Montgomery, and incumbent Republican Allen Penny Demar, running for re-election. Thanks for the time. You guys covered a lot of ground. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks to my producer, Alan Cunningham, and we appreciate you watching us here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. See you next time.
There you go, Richard. Thank you.